Hey everybody, Marky here from Tactical T-Shirts, and I'm doing a quick Armory Chat, and this is going to be Armory Chat episode 8. Let me say this again, Armory Chat episode 8. This is going to be mostly a political and topical discussion, and not one on guns, but I will throw a little gun thing at the end. Something that's been in the media since Donald Trump won the election, and it's just pissed me off. You see all these talking heads complaining that Donald Trump is going to trash NATO, or Donald Trump isn't going to adhere to our obligations under Article 5 for mutual self-defense. And whenever these people are talking, you know they're lying, because that is actually not what Donald Trump said, okay? For those of you that don't understand, let me just run through this real quick. NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, it's the Mutual Self-Defense Pact for Europe post-World War II. Full members have to meet certain conditions and certain criteria, and when they get full membership, they are able to invoke, quote, the Article 5, which is the Mutual Self-Defense Pact. You know, everybody has to come to military aid of all the members of NATO. It's, you know, the slang term for Article 5 is the Three Musketeers Clause, okay? And the media has been harping on this crap with Trump, saying that he's, you know, not going to meet our treaty obligations. Well, that is not what Trump said. What they don't want to tell you is, and what Trump was referring to, is to have full membership in NATO, you have to spend 2% of your GDP on self-defense. Okay, and if you go around Europe and you go around these NATO countries and you look and at what their defense spending is, I think only 4 countries in NATO spend the 2% or of GDP. And I got news for you: the U.S. is one of them. How many countries are there in NATO? So, first of all Trump is saying is, why are we funding this and spending all this money and on the hook for this thing? And these people, they don't even want to hold their obligations up. Trump's being a businessman, and he's decided that these assholes need to start paying their fair share. Because, and I can even prove this as to how this even works. I had a conversation with a former British military UK flag officer. He wasn't a flag when I talked to him. He's retired, but you know, an English general, and he was talking about his time working as a member of the NATO staff over in Europe, and he, in his mind, and again, he didn't realize he was doing this, but this is just an example of how these weenies over there think of this crap. He goes, well, when I was part of the NATO staff, I really wasn't part of the UK military. I was part of the NATO alliance. I was a NATO officer. And you can certainly see how someone like him can make that argument. But I guarantee every single U.S. officer or enlisted person serving in Europe doesn't wear 2 hats, and not mentally. Because at the end of the day, we're the people that have to run all this shit. We're the people that have to pay for all this shit. And when the balloon goes up, we're the people that have to pull everyone's bacon out of the fire. And this is what's the problem is with Europe. And what's also happened, and again, the media won't talk about this, what's happened to NATO since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War is NATO has hollowed itself out. All these member countries have spent less and less and less money on their military obligations, but they're spending more and more and more money on these bullshit feel-good social welfare programs. I mean, look, here's something that the media won't talk about. So NATO has expanded since the fall of the Cold War. All right, great. You know, you've got the Baltic states, the 3, was it Lithuania? I can't even remember the Baltic states. The Baltic states up there, up in Northern Europe, okay? And they are full members of NATO. And the Russians are literally right across the border. It's nothing for them to go across and, you know, capture these places. War games typically say that if the Russians were to come across with their maybe they do like 3 divisions or 4 divisions. They'd capture all 3 capitals of those 3 countries in 36 hours. Now, why do you care about that if you're watching this video and you're living in the United States and you voted for Donald Trump? Well, NATO, with the exception maybe the United States, doesn't have the ability for power projection. Okay, look at Central Europe, look at Southern Europe, look at Western Europe. How are these NATO countries going to, if a Baltic state invokes Article 5, and they've got maybe 36 hours until the Russians capture all these areas, and they invoke Article 5, and the Three Musketeer Clause comes up, how are all these NATO countries going to come to the defense of the Baltics? I mean, physically, how are they going to get their militaries up there? Do you know what the plan is? They're going to fucking drive. Think about that. NATO is so weak, and Donald Trump is pointing this out, that we are carrying the load for all of this crap, and the political elites in Washington, the political elites in the Democratic Party, the political elites in Europe are whistling past the graveyard on this kind of crap, and all Donald Trump is doing is he's going around, he's going to do a nice business audit of the NATO members. And if you are not paying your fair share to be a part of this club, you might have to be kicked out of the club. That's all he's saying. He's not talking about if the balloon goes up tomorrow and someone invokes Article 5 and they're a full NATO member. They're a full NATO member, and that we're not going to do what we're supposed to do. But so I've just explained what the reality is of NATO right now. Okay, that the U.S. media establishment won't discuss. Let's talk about the Russians. Let's talk about Ukraine. Let's talk about Georgia. Okay. These 2 countries, the Russians are in Ukraine. They took Crimea. They're in eastern Ukraine, and they fought a little war with Georgia there for a while. Why did Russia do that? Well, at one point we had the NATO, again, these people that are paying their own fair share, these bureaucrats that run this organization. They were they expanded NATO's commitments into the Baltics. We really, realistically, right now, the way NATO is set up, we are not prepared to defend the Baltic members of NATO. We couldn't defend them, not without the use of nuclear weapons by the United States military. But this same NATO was openly telling Georgia and Ukraine, we are going to extend membership to you. Well, that's all on the Russian border too, and the Russians have been freaking out about it. That's why the Russians have been acting the way they've been acting in that part of the world. But let's be realistic. Was there ever, if we can't even defend the Baltics, was there ever any chance that NATO could pick their asses up and go all the way out to Georgia to defend Georgia? Not Georgia, United States, for the people that just rolled in here, but Georgia in Eastern Europe. Basically in the Balkans almost, or it's a joke. I mean, it's complete horse crap, and it's a perfect example of why these people are living in a fantasy world and not discussing the real issues that we're all facing economically and militarily. It's just like discussing when Trump was discussing Japan. Okay, Japan is a very wealthy country. Okay, they're an ally of the United States. They're an ally of, quote, liberal democracy. There is no reason why Japan can't field one of the most powerful militaries in Asia to help keep the world order intact. And Japan has actually been doing this. Japan, I think, has the largest destroyer fleet in the world. Japan is building aircraft carriers. They don't call them aircraft carriers, but they are. They're helicopter whatever destroyers, but they're aircraft carriers. And Japan is fired up having a Marine Corps because Japan has looked at the numbers. They've looked at the math, and they realize that we cannot we cannot depend on United States 100% to pay for everything without us contributing. And also the politics of it, the American voter is getting tired of having to pay for all this stuff, and everyone else not carrying their fair share. So, you can make the same argument for South Korea. There's been some changeovers and handoffs as far as, the control of stuff in South Korea. So, it's just when you're watching the news and you're watching the media, and these people are all talking about, Trump and everything's terrible and he's going to get us into a war and all this crap with NATO. They're all a bunch of liars. They're a bunch of goddamn liars, and it's all horse crap. So, all right, I know it's the Armory Chat. I got the NATO thing off my chest because it's just, whatever. Those who are regular listeners, maybe want to follow up on a holster issue that I've got going on. Yes, the rumors are true. I broke my everyday appendix carry holster, so I'm not carrying an HK VP9 right now. I am actually carrying a Glock 17. I prefer the bigger Glocks because I just do. So there, a gun has made it into the Armory Chat. This is going to be a quick one, in and out. I'm frustrated with the news. I'm frustrated with the media. And just remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. And go Donald Trump. Everybody have a good day.